Hello, everyone. It's nice to be here once again. My name is Obu Joseph, and today we'll be dealing with FinTech transactions and contracts. I can see that the room is already packed and people are still coming on board. But very quickly, I would just want to encourage all of us that we have four mentors today. So this is like a Power Wednesday. I think is the highest number of mentors we've had in a single day for the FinTech, JIIPCC FinTech program. So I'm quite confident that we'll be dealing with all the issues and more. So for those of us who have live questions, please stay on standby. Once more, I just want to welcome each and every one of us, and I'm sure that we would have a very wonderful experience today with this session. So very quickly, my job is very simple. I'll be your moderator for today. Just give me a few seconds. I'm trying to get some information up so that we can set the ball rolling immediately. Yeah, so like I said before, my name is Obu Joseph. I'm a legal practitioner. I have my master's in ICT and telecommunications law in the University of Strathclyde, Glasgow, Scotland. I would be your moderator for the JIIPCC FinTech program throughout the 9 weeks. So I would move quickly right now to introduce the program. I guess we all can hear me because I haven't, we all can hear me, yeah, okay, that's fine. So very quickly, the JIIPCC Mentorship and Internship program for FinTech is a quarterly mentorship program for students and young professionals across Africa. Mentees are afforded the opportunity to access valuable information, training, networking, from the best of minds within the sector. And also the program seeks to encourage training, development across those who have interest within this area across Africa. I would also advise that for more information about the program, you can watch the videos on YouTube and on Facebook. I'm sure we're already streaming live on Facebook. So very quickly, the objectives of the program, it's already on the flyer, but basically we exist to provide easy access, guidance, training, resource materials for students and young professionals in Africa, as well as to facilitate the dialogue within the FinTech sector. Taking into consideration the experience of seasoned practitioners and stakeholders. We also exist to ensure that mentees therefore transform to become mentors. And we facilitate further mentorship, internships, scholarships, and we do placements for mentees. So if you're interested in maybe studying for a program and you need a reference, we actually do that for several. We've done that in the past for some of our mentees, one of which is in Harvard, several others in Canada. So if that's something that you would like to enjoy, we can do a reference for you. So quickly, I'm done with the objective of the program. So I'll just take very quick announcements, if you don't mind. The first of which is that as a mentee, you can actually access up to 30 minutes of a private mentorship. So if that's something you're interested in, do let us know. And also be sure to know that we are streaming live. I would also advise that we put up our names in a way that it carries your full name. That's quite important so that we can be sure that you actually attended the program. Then the registration for the JIIPCC end of year party is ongoing for Abuja and Lagos, Nigeria residents. So if that's I actually encourage us to be part of it. Then keep your hands, keep your minds open. Week 8 is almost around the corner. That's our awareness week. More information about that will be sent out to you, but basically let that be on your mind. So down to the business of the day, we have 4 powerful mentors that will be joining us in today's session. It's a legal power pack, so just be ready with your questions and be ready with all the questions you need to ask. So I'll be taking the profile for our first mentor. I'm sure we can already view that on the screen, but I'm trying to call up the information. Just give me a few more seconds. All right, yes. So Peretimi Pere. Peretimi Pere is a senior associate in ALEX Technology, Media, and Telecommunications Practice. She obtained her master's degree in Information Technology Law from Fordham University in New York. In her role at ALEX, she regularly advises diverse tech startups on their business structure, regulatory compliance, fundraising, contract negotiations, and other corporate, commercial, and governance issues. You're very welcome, Peretimi. I will take the profile for our second mentor for today. We're trying to get the. All right, thank you so very much. Just a second while I read the profile. We actually already all have the profile, but it's still necessary to read it. This is a long one. We have Chuma Akana. Chuma Akana is a commercial lawyer and partner in the law firm of Chester Law Legal Practice Practitioners. He specializes in technology, media, and intellectual property law with a bias for financial technology, law, and policy. He has over a decade of experience advising clients in the corporate and commercial law, financial technology, intellectual property law, mergers and acquisitions, and he is astute in private equity and venture capital transactions. Chuma has represented tech startups and other corporate clients on various cross-border transactions. Chuma is the founder of the Innovation and Technology Lawyers Network, Italan, a network of tech lawyers and startups with a mission to bridge the law and technology gap. Chuma worked as general counsel for 3 years in a top multinational company involved in international trade and financial services, in which time he was seconded to one of the top tier law firms where he advised elite clientele on matters relating to capital markets, energy, and cybersecurity. Chuma has also advised on several landmark transactions, both locally and internationally, on FinTech and intellectual property law, an alumnus of the Lagos Business School. Awesome. Chuma is a regular speaker at seminars and conferences and has written several publications on the internet and digital media regulation, emerging technologies, blockchain, data protection and privacy, equity, and financing issues, basically. He's a champion of data privacy, cybersecurity, and technology disruptions in the digital economy. He also sits on the board of 2 tech companies where he provides strategic legal advisory. Thank you so much, Mr. Chuma, for being part of today. We'll move straight to the third mentor for today. That's loading up on the screen. Yeah, he needs no introduction. Peter Cole, he's one of JIIPCC's finest mentors. Thank you so much once more. For the other day, it was really awesome. Your session was really beautiful. I enjoyed it personally. So Peter Cole needs no introduction, but I'll still introduce him. Peter Cole is a legal associate with Nigeria's premier corporate commercial law firm, Chris Ogubanjo Legal Practice. He provides cutting-edge legal expertise at the intersection between law, technology, intellectual property, and finance. His professional legal expertise centers on novel areas of law, including technology law, intellectual property, and startups, AI, and FinTech advisory. He also provides strategic legal counsel to early-stage, emerging, and high-growth startups, venture founders, and their funders, whether private equity, venture capital, or angel investors. He's a member of select professional bodies, including the International Bar Association, that's the IBA, International Technology Law Association, ITech Law, FinTech Association of Nigeria, Young International Chamber for Commercial Arbitration, and the Startup Law Global Institute. Before pursuing a full-time career in legal practice and advisory, Peter Cole co-founded and led impact startups and social impact initiatives, winning awards for innovation and social enterprise. He's a fellow of the Savvy Fellowship, the 0 to 1 High Impact Fellowship, an ambassador with the World Literacy Foundation, and an alumni of the Halt Prize Global Enterprise Challenge. Thank you so very much, Peter Cole. It's nice to have you once again. Finally, we'll be taking the last profile, and that's for Ifeoluwa Ebiseni. Ifelua Ebiteni is an associate in the data protection, IP, and regulatory compliance practice groups at ALEX. That's the top tier law firm in Nigeria. She has significant experience in representing and advising clients on regulatory compliance, corporate financing, investment, and funding rounds in the FinTech space, in the technology space. Ifelua has a firm understanding of the Nigerian FinTech space. She assists clients in working through the regulatory quagmire of the industry. She was a key member. She was a key member of the team that drafted the Nigerian Startup Act. She's also a member of a team that advises startups on appropriate legal structure for their fledgling business ideas, as well as provide ancillary legal services under the Founders Institute. As a data privacy advocate and a member of the data protection compliance team, she routinely carries out audits on data processing activities of companies, advises on the legal protection and cybersecurity threats and implications in relation to cross-border projects, and also facilitates training on compliance with the Nigerian data protection regulations. That's the NDPR. She's a member of the National Trademark Association, IP Law Association of Nigeria, the IBA, the ICT, Capital Markets Committee of Nigerian Bar Association, section on business law. A contributor to the Chambers and Partners Doing Business in Nigeria 2022 guide, and the Thomson Reuters Practical Law Guide on IP transactions in Nigeria. You can all see that's our mentees that today is really going to be awesome. So I'm very sure that the mentees are preparing to take this further in terms of having our presentations. So I'll be taking the other announcements later, but I would really want to delve straight into today's presentations so that we can actually commence the program for today. So very quickly and without wasting so much more of our time, I would like to call on Group 1 for their presentation. So is Group 1 ready so you can actually take the floor immediately? Group 1, are you there?
Yes, sir.
All right,
yes.
Go ahead. All right, you can proceed. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. My name is Akile Kerut, and I will be presenting for Group 1 on FinTech transaction. And I want to share my screen. But while I'm sharing the screen, it is important. The introduction to FinTech. FinTech has been used to revolutionize financial institutions for millions of people across the globe, changing how we pay each other, buy stock and other financial instruments, and access to financial advice. So in this discourse, we'll be seeing how FinTech has improved on bank transactions, stock market, and all. So I don't know, I'm trying to share my screen. Okay. So can you see the screen now? So these are the outline. We have introduction, we have meaning, and we have examples of FinTech transaction, the risk involved, legal backing, and profit. Then the conclusion. So the meaning of FinTech transaction, FinTech transaction is like the application of an advanced technology to aid the use of financial to aid the use of the way I'm sorry. Okay, I think I'm back. So FinTech transaction is an application of an advanced technology for both desktop and mobile phones to simplify and expand types of software and mobile apps, like moving money from one bank to another, moving money from between accounts and depositing checks. So we move to the types of FinTech transaction. So we have payments, we have insurance, we have robo advising and stock trading. Then we have crowdfunding, we have blockchain and cryptocurrency, the peer-to-peer lending. So payments. FinTech online payment applications have revolutionized payments, making it convenient, easy, and highly accessible for all. Under the payment application, we have wallets like PayPal, we have remittances like Currency Cloud, and we have Venmo and Cash App. So here, FinTech has bring about an easy way to make payments, online payments. Like for example, this remitter now, when students want to pay school fees, now students pay their school fees online through remitter. They will use their card and they use it pay the to pay their school fees. Then we have insurance through InsurTech. We know that insurance is a way of like insuring your goods or anything by paying money called premium. For example, someone that want to make a like that want to pay money for that want to make money and that want to pay money for fire insurance now. The person will pay like a premium in case any of the good is being destroyed by fire and all. So fintech transactions on insurance include several applications. We have AI-driven products, that's artificial intelligence and processes. One example would be the use of devices that monitor your driving in order to adjust auto insurance rates. So fintech has also there's something called utmost good faith in insurance. So I think fintech transaction has also bring about through insurtech has also bring about how even though the person has insured maybe like a particular car, the thing we also monitor how the person is using the car and all. So we move to robo advisory and stock trading. So robo advisors are apps or online platforms that optimally invest your money automatically for little cost and are accessible to ordinary individuals. So fintech robo advisory and stock trading, they use machine learning and artificial intelligence to provide financial advice and management for stockbrokers. So we have examples like Sophie Betterment and Wealth Funds. Then we move to crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is like a financing method that solicits small individuals to raise money and like it's like a contribution. For example, maybe a candidate of a particular political party, maybe they can just come online and say that okay, we are targeting $13,000. We are asking people to to make their contribution for the campaign, and also crowdfunding has also made that possible. We have we have platforms like GoFundMe, Kickstart, and Kickstarter. Then we have blockchain and cryptocurrency, then peer-to-peer lending. How peer-to-peer lending works is, you know, most times we people like peer-to-peer lending works by like people borrowing each other money on a particular app. So we have risks involved in fintech transaction. We have unexpected market occurrences. Unforeseen market occurrences pose a significant operational risk simply since they are unexpected. Also, extreme reaction to quick market occurrence can cause central solvency and liquidity issues for both financial institutions and fintech. For example, in this robo advising and stock trading, when maybe the price of a share for example, the price of a share has really gone up, and people quickly buy more shares, and later the price now go down immediately. Price go down like it's like it creates problem for people. It creates problem for people that has invested in that shares. So we have non-compliance with regulatory requirements. Regulatory standards are changing rapidly for several fintech teams, rendering formulation of compliance practices exceedingly challenging. And if such standards are not strictly followed, business risks being detected in non-compliance, being penalized substantially and damaging their excellent market reputation. This regulatory requirements has really like is one of the core issues. For example, you know that fintech introduced tech into financial institutions, and technology is something that evolves. Technology is not static. So, and when it involves things, regulations tend to change, standards tend to, like the bar of the standards can be placed on high or low. So, and it most times it poses difficulty for fintech industry to comply with the regulations. Then we have personal and professional liability. Yes, there are sometimes that a person put in a particular field is not really an expert. It's not really an expert. Maybe, for example, maybe the person is not really professional. It's not really an expert in a particular field, and is there. So there can be risk of carelessness, negligence, service failures, then fraud claims. So we have data theft and cyber attacks. I can say that this data theft and cyber attacks is one of the core issue, because that's why, especially in Nigeria, people don't really trust fintech industry to keep their money, to save their money, because they are scared that they can hack into their information, and when they give some sensitive information, they are scared that hackers can hack into those. They think that those fintech industry, they don't have enough guide, like to guide their information and their information. So data thefts and cyber attacks, and that's one of the core issue that fintech industry they face. So we have increase in global rivalry. Then move to the regulatory compliance of fintech transaction. Can
Yeah,
you hear
sorry,
me?
you have less than 1 minute more. If you can round up, please.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, thank
So
you.
So we have regulatory compliance of fintech, we have data protection and cyber security. That this one is self-explanatory. Fintech companies industry should make should and they should be able to protect data. And so we have distributed ledger technology and smart contracts. They should make sure that contracts are they are being complied with, and people read digital contracts before they sign them. So we have robot advisors and legal responsibility. We have biometric authentication and using fingerprint recognition, and we have outsourcing core banking and payment system. Then profit in fintech transaction. This here we are going to be talking about how fintech make their profit. They are also profit organization. They have to make profit. So they make profit by subscriptions are free. When you when you download their app and you subscribe, then we have robot advisors. They pay money for advice. People pay money for advice. So we have third party. We have advertising, like in some apps, some ad can pop up and all. So we have API. We have data. Then conclusion, the above are some issues that border on fintech transaction, and when addressed properly, the benefits of the digital transformation and new connected technology environment will be fully actualized, thus creating a healthy fintech ecosystem. And one thing that the fintech industry must take into cognizance is the issue of data protection. When data protection is well grounded, all other things will follow suit. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so very much. I know that 10 or even 8 minutes, it's grossly inadequate to be able to take all the facts and all the juicy points in your presentation. But let's see how we can keep it simple, more of explanatory. Like you actually did very well explaining what's on the slide rather than actually reading. So thank you so very much for the presentation. So we'll move very quickly to group two. Group two, are you prepared to proceed with your presentation? Is group two ready?
Yes, group two is ready.
All right, you can take the floor now. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, could you stop sharing your screen so I could do so? All right. Yeah. So good day, everyone. So quickly, we'll be taking group two through me. We'll be taking us all through fintech contracts and common pitfalls in fintech. So as we all know, contracts are basically agreements between two parties or many parties, as the case may be. And a contract is the main reason for a contract is just to ensure that there's an understanding between all the parties that are involved in business or any relationship or transaction. And these days, it is really important that contracts are put in writing for issues like evidence and all, because it is not really, because in the business world, everyone is somehow trying to get one over the other person. So it is really important to put it in writing. So the first agreement we'll be going through is the founders agreement. And as the name implies, it is the agreement executed by partners or founders of the company just to facilitate their relationship. The contract can have provisions like duties of each founder, how much each founder is bringing to the table, what each founder is getting at the end of the day, and whatnot. Then confidentiality agreements, popularly called non-disclosure agreements, NDAs. They are agreements that ensure that every piece of information that is given to probably parties that are negotiating with one another is protected. For example, I'm in a meeting with someone who I'm trying to get on board in my business. And so I obviously have to disclose some vital information about my business. So us signing an NDA assures me or gives me the assurance that this person is not going to give my information to a competitor or even compete with me at the end of the day. Joint venture agreements. Joint venture agreements are agreements that two companies execute for a particular purpose. Like they are not forming a partnership or they are not really doing anything together other than business. It can be for any reason, but yeah. Advanced subscription agreements, ASAs. This type of contract is one executed between a company and probably a potential investor or an investor, in which the investor is going to be granted some form of equity in the company at a later time. That's when what is called a trigger event takes place. Then a service level agreement, like we mentioned this when we were making a presentation on open banking, that the operational guidelines of the CBN mandates an API provider and an API consumer to execute service level agreements to facilitate their relationship. So a service level agreement is just an agreement between a service provider and a client, whereby particular aspects of the service are agreed between the service provider and the service user. So there's also something called smart contracts, although this is a very futuristic phenomenon. It is just the use of blockchain technology to ensure that parties don't renege on what they've already agreed on. So when a smart contract is executed, it is more difficult for a party to say, oh, I'm not performing my responsibilities again, or I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that. Because it's more than just, okay, a document is brought to the table and both parties sign, and this one has his copy, this one has his copy. And one day someone just wakes up and says, I'm not doing it again. And they go to court, blah, blah, blah. So a smart contract the main aim of a smart contract is to curb that and to ensure that every party to a contract performs their obligations optimally and as at when due and cannot renege on their commitments already. Very quickly, we go to the pitfalls and solutions. So the common pitfalls that financial technology contracts might face are these four that we've highlighted. And the first one is, for example, party for the benefits of the bank's customers, and the third party's system is down or something. How does the bank explain to their customers that, oh, this fault is not from us, it is from this third party, and we can't really do anything about it right now? So it's always advised that the contract envisages situations like that, to, you know, so that when things like that happen, they know what to do. And also, point two, also, while banks are required to maintain adequate internal protection of customer data, when there's a partnership with a third party, like the example I gave, when there's a partnership with a third party, that means the third party is going to gain access to the bank's customers' data. That is the problem, because what if I don't want my data to get to the hands of this other third party, even though most times it's subject to the customer's consent? Then user retention and user experience. For the fintech sector, user retention and user experience are one of the major concerns. However, a fintech app should manage and balance between user experience and security. For example, you should offer a mobile app banking service that is neither easy to break. It might be more difficult for
It appears we are having like a network breach. I don't know if it's just me who can't hear, and is group 2 presenter still online? Do we have the backup presenter? Who is backing up for group 2? We actually don't have, we have about 2 minutes or 1 minute more for
I'm so sorry. To round up quickly.
All right.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, to quickly round up. It is easier for traditional banks to retain their customers, unlike fintechs, because the customer can basically say, oh, I don't like this app, download the other one, or stuff like that. So that is one of the problems that fintechs face. And lack of tech expertise. Among fintech challenges in 2020, lack of tech expertise is also the main one. There are not many people who have that technical know-how concerning financial technology right now. But that's talking about the technical aspect. But with time, these problems will be solved adequately. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your presentation. It was very concise and it was interesting to listen to as well. Full of a lot of information, especially there are several aspects of it that I actually found very useful personally. So I would want to call on group 3, if group 3 is ready, so that we can proceed to take the presentation of group 3. Is group 3 available?
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Can you see my screen? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll be talking about FinTech agreement, investment agreement. And for this presentation, we'll be defining I don't think it's necessary that I go to define what FinTech is again, since we've been treating it for the past 2 weeks. But we'll talk about FinTech, we'll define FinTech agreement, investments and agreements, also explain what investment agreements are and the types of investment agreements, and we'll explore the various forms of investment agreements. And finally, look at investments, FinTech investments in the various parts of the world. So yes, like I said, we'll skip what's FinTech, but just to recap, it's used to describe financial technology, financial company, technology companies using technology to foster their operations or offer a financial service. So financial investments is a type of of investment is a type of system investing money or capital by utilizing financial technology. Investment can be done through stocks, deposit, and mutual funds. So when we talk about investment, we're talking about how do this financial technology, how do fintechs raise money? We hear about funding, Series A funding, Series B funding. So these investment agreements, I believe, is how these investments are governed by certain kind of agreements. One thing I also tend to believe is that these investment agreements are not different from all traditional kinds of investment, though they might have specific clauses. They might have specific clauses that are peculiar to fintech, but they are like regular kinds of contracts, investment contracts. So just to provide a little bit of facts, so we are talking about, we know that fintech requires a lot of agreements or certain kind of agreements to regulate their businesses. In 2018 alone, global fintech investments hit a record of $39 billion, and that speaks about the potential for the industry, or potential for fintech investment. Now, so the way fintechs raise money, or where they invest their money, we are talking about, we've seen over the years seen large fundings or large funding rounds that established, that have allowed fintechs to remain private. So they are not public companies, they remain private. And one example is Goldman Sachs leading acquisitions of financial technology companies. And that's the last report says that they acquired about 20 fintechs. So Goldman Sachs is like the most active in terms of investing in fintech companies and stuff like that. So also, we should know that investments in financial technology startups, there are some certain areas that they focus on. So we are talking about the digital banking, the marketplace lending, insurtech, that's insurance technology, the wealth tech, that's and capital markets infrastructure, which involves the automation and the communication of investments as a banking service. So so let's just move on, and types of investment agreements. So we have the share purchase agreement, the convertible notes, and simple agreement for future equity. Now, I would also like to point out that investment in fintech is across a spectrum. So we are either talking about collaborative transactions and investment transactions. So what do I mean by collaborative transactions? So we're talking about financial technology we're talking about maybe traditional financial institutions collaborating with fintech companies toward a specified goal. So for this kind of agreement, for this kind of investments or collaborative transactions, we're looking at licensing. So we'll be having a licensing agreement. So we'll be talking about a financial technology company, a traditional financial institution license, utilizing, obtaining license from a fintech company to use their software. We're talking about service agreements, and we're talking about platform collaborations or white label agreements. So also, the second arm of the spectrum is investment transactions. So when we are talking about investment transactions, we are talking about whether a financial company or a particular person is obtaining whether a minority interest or a majority interest in the financial technology company, or is it a joint venture agreement or a strategic partnership? And finally, is it an acquisition? So are we acquiring the financial technology? Are we acquiring the company outrightly? So some of them, I think we can at the top of our heads just recall a few. So maybe when Paystax was acquired, and the likes. I think pay stacks as far back as 20. I know it was big news then. So when we talk about fintech, there are some particular clauses that are, there are some things that you must consider. So there are some, they call them issues that you must pay attention to. So for example, whether we're licensing a software and data, whether we're talking about licensing software, that's under the collaborative transactions. So what are the things you want to look out for? What are the clauses that you want to look out for? So we're talking about user rights. So what are the rights of the users under this agreement? The functionality, what's the software going to do? What's the software going to be used for? We're talking about price. We're talking about, is my time almost done?
Actually, your time is up, but you can wrap up in about 90 seconds.
Okay. So we're also talking about so let me just skip to the investment transactions because that's what I didn't know. So when we talk about investment transactions, we're talking about what are the things you want to look out for. We're looking at due diligence. We're looking at due diligence, the control rights, and we're talking regulatory bodies and the like. So it depends on the kind of investments you are making under the investment transactions. The kind the kind of compliance we're looking at is, it ranges from investment to investment. Yes, so that's that about that. So we're talking about control rights, provisions, and exit line. What are the, how can I pull out of this investment and the like? So your investment agreement is supposed to focus on those points. So the tips for, since my time is almost done, let me just jump to the tips. So when you're making investments, you should be cautious about the financial institutions should be cautious about the kind of investments they are making. So because we talk about this bubble, so we talk about do not use your, okay, do not use savings to invest. Okay, well, for financial institutions, I'm very sure that they also, there's a way they raise funds, and make sure you do due diligence. Make sure you are very diligent as to the kind of business the financial technology company is into. So yes, that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Kingsley. Like I said earlier, the time is not enough. I know that, but I think your presentation was good to go. So we will be taking the final presentation for today's session. And I would like to call on Group 4 to proceed with their presentation. Is Group 4 ready to proceed?
Yes.
All right, Vivian, thank you.
Sorry about that. Good afternoon. I'll be presenting on the topic FinTech term sheet negotiations. Before we start, I would like everyone to understand what FinTech term sheet is. FinTech term sheets are legal documents that define the investment parameters to be adhered to by parties in a business agreement. They are non-binding documents meant to record two or more parties' intentions to enter into a future agreement based on specified preliminary terms. So they are basically like a pre-contract agreement, just like a memorandum of understanding, which contains negotiation of the party, but is not binding. Term sheets are drawn for temporary partnerships that eventually come to an end. This simply means that they are temporary till the contract is enforced. So a term sheet ought to clarify the level of influence of each parties on the agreement. This means that the entrepreneurs and investors will agree on what kind of ownerships they will have in the company. For instance, the investor can negotiate to invest $5 million for 10% equity of the company. A term sheet should also forecast what could happen in the future and legislate any eventuality. The goal is to reduce conflict and mitigate agency problems within the entrepreneur and investors. Negotiations, FinTech term sheets are for negotiations and not ransom. Before an entrepreneur prepares a term sheet, he or she is expected to takes certain precautionary or preparatory steps, such as ensuring that he has agreed on his ownership percentage and how stock will vest with the other members of the founding team before approaching investors. Secondly, the entrepreneur or startup ought to approach as many investors as possible, as this helps them to gain insight on what their perceived valuation should be. Thirdly, the entrepreneur also needs to pay consideration to the natural habitat of his investors and know the kind of deals they have previously invested in. This they can do this by conducting due diligence, by speaking with other businesses that have raised capitals with the same investors. Finally, entrepreneurs or startups seeking to enter into negotiations with an investor or to seek advice from legal practitioners and also companies that have raised capital from the same investor. However, they are not to take this final decision. They're not to take this advice as their final decision. It's supposed to just serve as a guidance to help them make favorable decisions. Roadmap. These are the steps to take These are the steps to take in entering a negotiation. After taking the preparatory steps, which we just discussed, a fintech startup is expected to kickstart the negotiation by first involving a knowledgeable counsel who is going to guide them through every step of the process and protect its interest. Then the fintech company, like I previously said, ought to reach out to more than one venture capitalist and get them interested so that they can choose the venture capitalist with the best offer. After this, the fintech startup has to carry out proper research and understand common market terms. The founder should watch out for red flags in potential investors. These red flags could include any hint of disloyalty, lack of trustworthiness, illegality, and all those kind of things. The fintech company should also have a reasonable understanding of valuation and dilution. Valuation simply means the estimation of the worth of something. In this case, it means the estimation of the worth of the asset or stock of a company, while dilution or share dilution occurs when a company issues additional stock, thereby reducing the ownership proportion of a current shareholder. And lastly, the fintech company should at every step consult experts for advice. A term sheet usually outlines the following: the valuation of the company, that is the estimated worth of the company, the amount of timing of investment, and it should also be spelled out in the term sheet. The form of investment of the venture capitalist should be stated in the term sheet. The investment could be in form of shares, stocks, real estate, bonds, cryptocurrencies, and so on. Non-solicitation. Non-competition and non-solicitation agreements must be included in the term sheet. This agreement is a restrictive covenant inserted to term sheets to protect the investment of the investor by restricting the founder from communicating and conducting business with the clients, employees, or suppliers of the target company for a specified period of time after his exit from the company. Protective provisions. Protective provisions are terms that allow preferred shareholders to veto or block specific corporate actions. Protective provisions can help protect the interest. Sorry? But protective provisions can help protect the interest of minority shareholders in the event that various shareholders disagree regarding the best course of action for the company. Then the number of directors that the investors can elect should also be contained in the term sheet. Also, vesting of the founder's stock should be contained in the term sheet as it is important. It determines the treatment of a founder's stock if the founder leaves the company before the shares is fully vested. Price-based anti-dilution protection in connection with future sales of the company's stock. When a company raises money in a down round, that issuance is viewed as diluting the value of the stock held by the earlier investors. For that reason, investors often negotiate anti-dilution protection as part of their investment in order to offset the dilutive effect of future down rounds. Then lastly, preemptive rights of the investors to purchase and stock issuance on priority basis are also outlined in the term sheet. Benefits or importance of term sheet. It acts as an overview of all the critical terms that need to be conveyed to both parties. That means it clearly states all the terms of the negotiation of both parties to the term sheet.
Sorry, Vivian, can you pause a bit? Mr. Kingsley, please, can you mute yourself? There's a lot of interruption. Oh, can some?
Was actually crossed with the defendant's counsel, the second defendant's counsel.
Okay. Secondly, it has binding clauses such as confidentiality and exclusivity clause. The confidentiality clause protects both parties by restricting each party from divulging information about the other party, which was gotten by virtue of their business relationship. The exclusivity clause in a term sheet prevents the company from looking for other investments for a certain period while the term sheet is being negotiated. Finally, a term sheet also acts as ready reference in later stages of negotiations. That means they can go back to the term sheet for reference. Process. Before signing the final agreement with parties, before signing the final agreement, both parties will progress through different steps. This slide highlights the processes that should be carried out before the finalization of the negotiation. Number one, corporate approvals. Founders should be responsible for managing existing shareholders and investors. They can also designate this managerial work to the lawyers. Secondly, engage all parties. This means that all parties are expected to be actively involved in the process of negotiation. The major parties should be in communication at all times during the negotiation. Lock-in economics. The entrepreneur should lock in the economic dynamics of the agreement early enough. If the capitalization table is still moving close before signing, consider a second closing so that you can close the investors that are on board. A capitalization table is simply a table that provides analysis of a company's percentage of ownership, equity dilution, and value of equity in each round of investment by founders, investors, and other owners. Then stick to your timelines. That means if you have deadlines, you stick to them because it shows how serious you are to the investors. Then be cautious of holidays. This is especially for founders that work with international investors because they take those holidays are their rest days. They don't work on those days. Negotiations. The entrepreneur ought to separate commercial negotiations from legal ones by discussing commercials with investors and legals with lawyers. I think that's explanatory. So number two, document versions. The entrepreneur should ensure that his lawyers track all changes in the term sheet and note red lines against most recent versions. That means they should, any mistake or corrections and everything, the lawyer should note them. Then in the event of co-investment, the investors must have discussed the details of the negotiation and be on the same page on all fronts. So calls should be limited because the main source of information should be by email so that they can go back to it and they can reference it later. So signing and closing.
Quickly.
Sorry?
Yeah, I said your time is up, but you can round up in about 60 seconds. Signing
and closing of the term sheet. Execution versions. The lawyers are to circulate the agreement 2 days before the signing so that they can go through it and before signing. Then signatures, they should sign. If it's possible to use electronic signatures, they should use electronic signatures. Then they should retain a venture capital experience. I'll be concluding this presentation with a few crucial things a founder should be aware of or look out for in a term sheet. Number one should be amount of funding. 2, pricing, fees and costs. Then 3, the entrepreneur should also note the securities and guarantees that are required, as the guarantors and the guarantors that are written in the term sheet and all. They should take note of them. Then financial covenants. this should be fixed with a headroom, like that's a freedom, there's space for flexibility. Then the restrictive covenants. When creating restrictive covenants, the founders ought to allow for reasonable negotiations so as to ensure fairness to all parties involved. Positive obligations. The term sheet generally contain all obligations of the parties. Then events of default. General defaults are usually stated in term sheets. So it's specific defaults should also be stated in the term sheet, but it's not usually so. Condition precedent. It is important for the entrepreneur to be aware of any condition precedent to the finalization of the term sheet and carry out that condition. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. I must really thank you for this presentation. For me, it's been eye-opening on a lot of fronts. I would also like to appreciate everyone from group 1, 2, 3, and 4 for all the presentations. So very quickly, we would like to know what the mentors have to say on each of the presentations. So each mentor has approximately a maximum of 10 minutes, within 8 to 10 minutes to look at the presentations across board. I don't know how you're going to do that really, but I want to trust that we'll be able to have your views within a 10-minute period for each of the mentors. So very quickly, I'll be calling on Chuma Akana to proceed to give your views on the presentations from the mentees. Thank you, sir. The floor is yours, Mr. Chuma.
Hello, Joseph. Thank you. Good morning or good afternoon to everyone. Can you hear me very well? Oh, okay. Yeah, so I will just be talking about a few of my observations and then some other things that I want the presenters to take note of. And that is first of all, okay. So for group 1, right? Group 1 talked about fintech transactions. And one thing that I expected to jump out in that presentation was who are the regulators that control the fintech ecosystem or control the fintech space, because there was a slide on regulatory compliance of fintech transactions, and I didn't see the regulators highlighted there. So most times, and also another thing that is in Nigeria, fintech is very regulated because it has to do with financial transactions. And everybody knows that the CBN is behind finance in Nigeria. So anything that has to do with financial transactions is the CBN that regulates that space. So, but apart from the central bank, there's also other regulators around the same ecosystem, like the NITDA, and also some of the regulations and some of the laws that also affects the fintech. Over the past few years, CBN has come up with payment service bank guidelines, open banking framework, and also a lot of frameworks for PSSP, getting switching license, getting all these licenses that most fintechs have to get at one point in their during their lifetime. So I was expecting to see the regulators highlighted and some of the areas in which those regulators also feature. Also, there's a new Startup Act, which definitely affects fintechs and most tech startups, in that which was recently assented by the president. And I also expected to see some of that in that presentation, and also the NDPR bill, or the data protection bill that is still being looked at. So that was what I expected, but all in all, it was a good presentation. But I think some areas with respect to how fintech transactions are being affected by regulation should also have been highlighted. On group 2, I noted some things down here, and I'm just trying to look at that presentation from group 2 again. Well, one thing from the group 2 presentation on fintech contracts. Okay, so I think that the presentation was interesting, even though I expected that there will be more bullet points as opposed to a lot of wordings in the presentation. But the presenter also did speak to that presentation, which was good. But one thing I wanted to mention is that in a founders agreement, one of the key features of a founders agreement is exit of founders. So most times in most fintech transactions, what you've noticed is that towards the, and this is also popular in Africa as it is in the Western countries too. In the middle of the lifespan of the company, one of the founder may want to leave, either to go and found another business or to do something else. So how do you treat exit of a founder? How does he retain his shares? Does he keep his shares? Does he retain his place on the board, even if he's not in the company again? So some of those are very key features of a founders agreement. And sometimes what we've also done is, apart from the founders agreement, we also provide a shareholders agreement, even though shareholders agreement is generic to a lot of companies. But for fintechs too, apart from the founders agreement that address issues with respect to the founders' rights, you can still have a shareholders agreement, so that because there can be shareholders who are not founders, So the founders agreement is for the founders, the first people, but the shareholders agreement is for shareholders. So those are some of the areas. Then also, service level agreements too affects everybody that the fintech is dealing with. So there's a client of ours who is into insurtech and is insurance for small devices, which is a growing area in Nigeria. And one thing they've done is to have, because they don't have an insurance license, they also have partnerships with the big insurance companies to be able to to ride on the back of that insurance license used by the insurance companies. So you have SLAs most times with people around these areas. So apart from API integration, and then also the open banking framework, which I think earlier this year the CBN came up with, also now allows people to share data between fintechs and banks. So if you can plug into that framework, is easier, is very easy. And then, of course, there's an SLA agreement that has to do with this. Then also the presenter mentioned the ASA, which I think is the Advanced Subscription Agreement. And the interesting thing is that it can come in different forms. So I know one of the presentations dealt directly with investment agreements, but we could also have mentioned it there that some of these agreements include venture capital, include things like SAFE. For blockchain companies, there's SAFT. So SAFE is simple agreement for future equity, and there's simple agreement for future tokens. So for a company that is going to tokenize its assets at any point, some of the investors will take what they call a simple agreement for future tokens, and then convertible notes and all that. So that's for group 2. Then for group 3, I noted that, so group 3 addressed the investment agreement in fintech, and I like the presentation, and I like also that the presenter spoke a lot to the presentation. But one thing I noticed there was that apart from the types of agreements that was listed, there's also mezzanine financing, which is a hybrid between debt and equity. So because tech companies, most times they raise equity, sometimes they also go for debt, because if you cannot raise equity, then you need to go for debt financing. So even though convertible loans are a form of debt, sometimes you have like a hybrid agreement where they could say 50% of the investments will be equity, and then another 50% will be debt. So that it can also come in that form. And what you have then is it won't be a simple agreement of future equity. It won't also be a convertible note. It will be a hybrid of those two. So sometimes it depends on the agreement between both parties. So you could have hybrid, you could have debt financing, you could have private equity, you could also have venture capital. And there's a lot of interest in venture capital, because according to the Venture Capital Act in Nigeria, there are incentives for participating as a venture capital. And also the Startup Act too has created like a fund which the government will grant to fintech companies who pass the test, to be able to have those kind of funding. So that was what I noticed on Group 3 presentation. And then also, I noted something here on growth potential, but I cannot recollect the point I was going to make on that. But all in all, I think it was I commend the presenters for their presentation, and I look forward to the rest of the session. So that's my contribution for now.
Thank you very much, Shuma. Thanks a lot. I've been doing a lot of writing as well. I would like to quickly invite Peretimi to make comments on the presentation of all the groups. Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome.
I'm sorry, Joseph. I may leave just before the end because I have another meeting to run. So let me just mention that. Sorry.
All right, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is Peretimi on the call? Do we have Peretimi on the call? In the absence of, while we await her presence, I would like to also invite Peter Cole. Is Peter Cole here with us today? Is Peter Cole here with us? All right, we're still expecting Peter Cole to join us. So I think we can call on Ife Olua to join us. Ife Olua, are you on the call?
Hi, I'm on the call. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay. Just to confirm, can everyone hear me? All right, thank you. So, great presentation by all group members, all the groups. Impressive, actually. I would just like to touch on a few things. Most of the things that I wanted to talk about have been mentioned by the first mentor. So I'll just go over, I wouldn't want to go over the same things again, but I'd just like to touch on a few other things. So for group 1, talking about fintech transactions, but I'd love to see like other, so by fintech transactions, I just assume that what group 1, what they touched on is the different aspects of fintech, and it would have been nice to see other things other than the ones we have here. I can't see savings, I can't see investments. So it would have been nice to touch on some of these other things. Then talking about risk involved in fintech transactions, it would have been nice to see them, drill down on data protection and cybersecurity. Yes, they did mention data thefts and cyber attacks. It would have been better to talk about these things in greater detail. Another thing that I would have loved to see is okay. So I think I can't remember if it was group 1 or group 2 that talked about I can't remember which of the groups talked about the reservation that many Nigerians have with respect to use of fintechs as opposed to traditional banks. So while that is not a risk, it would have been nice to see how these reservations would also has some form of link with the risks that are involved, particularly with respect to the use of personal data of data subjects. Another thing I would like to talk, okay, so I think he mentioned it, he already mentioned regulatory compliance, generally speaking, and how it would have been nice to see them drill down on regulatory compliance and the role of regulators, because of course it's a well-regulated space, and that'd be nice to see what's the role that different regulators play, and also see instances where we have overlaps, because we have instances where you could tell that a particular regulator has something to say about this. So one aspect would be cryptocurrency trading. It would have been nice to see something along those lines, and it would have also been nice to see practical example of things that are happening in the fintech ecosystem. Platform, a particular company. That'd be nice to see practical examples of that from the different groups. I don't know, please can you confirm if you can hear me still?
Yes, I can hear you.
Please, can you hear me? All right, thank you. Because I had an interruption from my end, so I just wanted to confirm you could still hear me. So I think that would be all from group 1. So I will just go right ahead to talk about group 2. Okay, wait, I would like to take group 3 first. So talking about investments, right? One thing, so for a better understanding of how fintech investments work, it would have been nice to see group 3 divide this into the major categorization, debt and equity. So that would have been a better approach. Then you talk about what it involves, what equity investment involves, and what debt also involves. That would have sort of simplified it, and then so you understand that these are these are different ways. Yes, so that's the first thing to point out. That's the first thing to point out. So talking about investment agreements, it would have been nice to see more things, because there are other investment agreements that we have also spoken about. So even a term sheet is also an investment agreement, because it's pretty much what you come across at an early stage of agreements. And
I think we are a little
sorry?
We are losing you slightly on the audio.
Okay. Is it better now? I don't know. Like, I have like... Sir, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. I can hear you.
All right, thank you. So if we had approached it from like the equity debt dynamic, then we can now pick the specific investment agreements that you have under equity. So when you then talk about equity, you then talk about like the different so you then talk about whether it's going to be like whether it's like an individual or it's a firm or a fund or a company that is, investing. Then you then talk about like the different agreements that you would come across at the different stages of the investment down to the final documents to be executed by the parties. That would have been a better way to approach it, as well as for debt. Then, okay, so then talking about like the investment in various parts of the world, what I would have loved to see personally is to see like the investments that are taking place in the Nigerian fintech space. Day in, day out, to hear of like a lot of companies, raising funds. We have determined the pace that it would have been nice to see like a representation of these transactions, which I did not see in the presentation. Yes. So on tips for investing in fintech, I would just like to add, in addition to the things that the presenters mentioned, I would just like to add that when you're investing, you do not, when you are as a fintech and you're trying to like seek investment from different people, what you need to also look at is see the investment from the investor's perspective. This would help you preempt like different things that would eventually come up. And there's also something called housekeeping, where you can preempt what the investor would want, or things that would either make the investment feel otherwise. So doing this housekeeping, which could also be called internal due diligence, it sort of helps you because the investor would also conduct their own due diligence on the company. But like when you do the internal due diligence, sort of helps you to preempt certain things that might be flagged by the investor, and then you're able to check your records, check your books. You check your records, check your books, and dot your I's, cross your T's. If you have any licenses, any debts you're yet to sort, any regulatory compliance that you are defaulting, or there's like one or two lapses, you're able to correct all of these things before the investor eventually comes on board. So that would sort of help you. Another thing would be to always carry along a competent financial advisor, because when it comes to valuation, so this thing is not something that a lot of big companies would or like need, because financial advisor when it comes to now
The network, I guess. I don't know if Ifeolo is still on the call, because it appears the audio, we're having more like an audio hitch. Ifeolo, are you still there? Are you still able to conclude? We couldn't hear you for a while. All right. So basically, I would want us to just take a very brief break by taking our photo shot So I would like to encourage everyone. We will move straight to questions immediately. I can see that Perry, Timmy, and Peter Cole are not on the Zoom call at the moment. So we'll just quickly take a few questions that our mentors can respond to before we call it a day. So I would really like to encourage our mentors not to quickly get off the call. Mr. Chuma, if you don't mind, we're almost rounding up. But right now, I would like us to have our pictures on so that we can smile for the camera. Let's see how we can take a picture screenshot. Please, everyone, do well to participate. It's proof that you were actually at today's mentorship session. Let's see how we can have our cameras on, please. I don't want to mention names of people who haven't put theirs on yet. Thank you so much. Mr. Chuma, please do join us if you don't mind. Thank you very much. Ruth, Deborah, okay, Deborah is on. I think most of us are actually on right now. Henrietta, Olufumi, if you don't mind, can we have your video on just for like 15 seconds, then you can take a little hide again. Just 15 seconds. Lillian, if you don't mind, goodness, Simi, Onyindamola, let's see how we can have our videos on. So Mr. Hosseini will let us know when the pictures have been taken. I think you can actually put up a smile right now so that we can have the screenshots done. For those of us that don't smile too well, let's just try our best and just act like you're smiling. Yeah, so thank you so much. We're actually done with the picture session. So very quickly, if you have any question, you can actually raise your hand so that you can ask your live question. Do we have anyone with a live question today? Okay, I think I can see a hand. You can go ahead. How many live questions do we have? Just a moment. I think I saw one. If you have a question, just go ahead and ask your question.
All right. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay. Thank you, our mentors, for the informative session. My question is with regards to smart contracts. I've engaged with materials trying to understand how smart contracts work, but I've not been able to get how it works because I don't understand how blockchain enforces the contract. And also a question related to smart contracts is that as smart contracts taking the role of courts in enforcing contract, because if the blockchain is charged.
Hi everyone.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, please just go ahead. This is Ife. Sorry, I had internet issues, but I'm back now. So whenever you want me to come back, I mean, if there is still time for that, just let me know.
All right. We're actually taking the questions now. So you can listen into the questions so that if you have any response to them, you can be able to respond to the question. So Mr. Joel was actually asking a question around smart contracts. Mr. Joel, if you don't mind, if you can take the question very quickly again so that the fellow can also listen into the question.
All right, sir. So my question was, I was basically asking for a more detailed explanation of how smart contract works. If you can give a scenario of how the blockchain enforces the contract. And I'm also I was asking if the role of courts in enforcing contract has been eroded by the blockchain, because if blockchain enforces contract, then what role does the court play in this kind of smart contract? I also have a question with regards to because in most of the presentations we majored on fintech companies in their startup or early stages. Are there situations where some other kinds of investors come into play, like private equity firms, before the initial public offer? Are there other investors that come into play? And lastly, just one more question. We had this issue in our group who prepares the term sheet. I read in the material that at the startup stage or the seed investment stage is usually the seed investor at later stages, maybe in series funding, sometimes is the founder or the fintech company that prepares the term sheet. Is there a watertight rule as to who prepares the term sheet, or it's flexible? So yeah, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe. Mr. Chuma, do you have any response to any of the 4 questions that Mr. Joel has asked? If you do, please, you can kindly respond first. Then after you respond, Ifeoluwa can also respond. Is Mr. Chuma still on the call? If you can actually go ahead, if you have a response to, he actually asked 4 questions, 2 on smart contracts. I think the last one on who prepares term sheets. So you can actually respond to the questions. It appears we're still having some network glitches. I'm still okay. I guess one of our mentors, Mr. Chuma, is no longer on the call. Hopefully he would come back in. I'm awaiting the first response to the questions. Mr. Hussein, can you confirm if Ifeoluwa is still on the call? I think she's on the call.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, so on the questions that Joel asked, I think he asked about term sheets. Just to record, I got all the questions. He asked about term sheets. He also asked about smart contracts. Well, I'm not sure of like the other 2 questions. Please, can you just is the little recap on the other 2 questions?
I think one of the questions bordered on blockchain, and if blockchain is now taking the role of the courts in terms of enforcement of contracts.
Okay. So I'll start with the last one. Contracts are basically governed by like the laws are basically governed by laws pretty much, depending on what both parties have agreed upon. So both parties can agree to be subject to a particular jurisdiction, as opposed to the default jurisdiction that would have, ordinarily applied if they were not subject, if there were no derogations in their contracts. So on whether or not blockchain displaces that, to the best of my knowledge, blockchain does not derogate from that, because if we have a situation where blockchain will take the place of enforcement of contracts, we would not have lawyers who would major in that aspect, because what exactly would then be the role of lawyers? So when it comes to blockchain, it is a secure platform. It's basically a secure way of ensuring that the parties do not, erode from the terms of the agreement, right? So it's your own way of ensuring that things are done the way we have contemplated. However, it does not preclude the parties from seeking recourse in courts of law in the event that any dispute occurs. So it reduces the chances of having such disputes. But in the event that a party decides to even, when it comes to contracts, you can even have a situation where the parties decide that a party wants to contest the existence of the contract in itself. So where I'm not even contesting the term, I'm contesting the fact that we actually have a contract, right? Do I resort to blockchain? to get a recourse, and it will definitely be the court of law. So that's my response on that. So as to the preparation of term sheets, so for early stage startups, to the best of my understanding, the term sheet is prepared by the investor. Right, then there will be like negotiations between the parties before they then agree on the specific terms that they want to have, and then subsequent the different statements. For the third, I'm trying to remember like what's it called, the third question.
I think, okay, you already answered the third and the fourth one. He actually asked, the first question had to do with smart contracts.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, so please, I don't know if I've answered. I think I've answered. I think one of the questions was like 2 in 1, and I don't know if I've touched like both aspects of the question. If there's anything I've left unanswered.
All right, I think we can actually delve to the questions. If there's anything else, maybe Joel can still come up later. But we have, I don't know if anyone has any other direct question for Ifeoluwa. Is there anyone there who wants to take a shot at the questions and ask a question? If there is no other question from the group, then I can just ask few questions we have here. Question 1 is, I'll be very quick. Question 1 is, what steps should be taken to manage risk, that's legal risk in fintech companies? Then question 2 is, what occurs if investors and founders cannot come to terms on a term sheet? Will investors give up some of their preferred terms if it means partnering with a company they believe is a great fit? That's the second question. Then the third one is, understanding a term sheet is not legally binding. Is there a moral obligation on the parties? Because normally confidential clauses are also in the term sheet. Then it now says, hence, the question is, to what extent can morality hold credibility in a courtroom if there is a breach in confidentiality, as knowing that there isn't a signed document between the parties? If you I don't know if you had the 3 questions. So you can give the questions a go if you don't mind.
Good. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can actually hear you like right now. We've not heard anything else. I guess it's still the network issues.
Please 1 second. I need to switch devices so I do not have any further interruption. Please just give me a minute.
No problem.
Thank you.
So our mentor is trying to switch devices so that she can quickly respond to the questions. That's question 1, 2, and 3. I can see there's also a 4th question. Is it possible to rescind fintech investment agreements? If yes, what are the probable reasons? But I guess we'll focus on the first 3 questions while we're expecting her to get back on a better network device. So while she's joining us back, one thing I would say with respect to the first question, what steps should be taken to manage risk in fintech companies? One thing I would say basically has to do with you need to have watertight agreements. That's internal agreements between that's within the company. Then watertight agreements between fintech companies and their collaborators. Because most fintech companies actually operate a collaborative, mechanism for dealing with, for even engaging in the business that they engage in. We would notice that the first mentor, Chuma made mention of companies using or hiding, not hiding per se, but companies that have to engage with the license of other companies. They necessarily don't have their own license, but there's some form of collaborative engagement between those companies and companies with licenses. So you need to have the right agreements that cover the transactions or cover the relationship between these companies. Then another thing I would also say, basically, in terms of managing legal risk, is that companies that have an advisory board would have a higher chance of mitigating some of this legal risk in fintech companies. If we've been following up the news, we've heard of several fintech companies that have had a lot of regulatory issues, not just in Nigeria, but across other countries in Africa. So when you have an advisory board, basically what the advisory board does for you is to highlight some of this risk and to see how the management of these companies can pay attention to those risk factors, so that you don't have a case where a company is taken down or taken out, or that license is revoked due to not complying with certain regulatory requirements and the compliance indicators. So it's actually very key. You need to have your advisory board. You need to have watertight agreements within the company, agreements between the company and other companies, in terms of their collaborative endeavor. So those are certain steps that can actually be taken. And it's also important to hire the right lawyers. You would be better off having a fintech lawyer on your team than having a criminal lawyer. And you would also be much better having a fintech lawyer that understands the business, because it's one thing to have a lawyer that necessarily has no inclination towards the business that the company is doing. The person just knows the theoretical aspects of maybe fintech and all of that, but they do not necessarily understand either how the company makes money, how the company loses money, how the company engages. Actually issues that I feel very strongly that fintech companies have to take into consideration when they are thinking of managing the risk that fintech companies actually have. So I wouldn't know, is Ifeoluwa back on the call so that she can respond to the questions as well? I've just actually tried on my own to see how I can do justice to question one. Ife, are you back? Ifeoluwa, are you back?
Yes, I am 100. Thank you.
I'll go ahead, please.
Thank you so much. So I think one question I heard, like the line was just going off. One question I had is a question on term sheets. I think the question was on whether term sheets are binding.
Yes, that's correct. That's actually one of the questions.
Please, can anybody hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. So I said that the question I had was on, was that the question?
Yes, I think you got the questions right. One of them is on the legal binding nature of a term sheet, and the other one has to do with managing legal risk in fintech companies.
Okay. So on the what's it called now, on the bindiness or otherwise of term sheets. So term sheets are by their nature not binding documents. So it's basically a document that both parties enter into, stating their interest and then the terms that they are proposing, the terms they intend to put into a definitive agreement. So term sheets are by their nature not binding. We may have certain instances where, reading into the term sheets and the intention of the parties at that particular time, certain terms might be held as binding, but by their very nature, term sheets are not binding and they are just limited commitments at that point between both parties. And so that's it on term sheets. Then the second question was on how to mitigate risks in a fintech. So the primary thing for me is ensuring that you have a so typically in a startup, a fintech startup, you would see a CEO, a CEO is the one in charge of the day-to-day running of the company, and then there's another person that is running business development and whatnot. So more often than not, these people do not have any expertise when it comes to regulatory compliance and whatnot. And this is typically find fintechs defaulting. So what they just focus on is building their products, business development, and then start talking about when to launch, getting investors and whatnot. They forget about the fact that you're coming into a space that is highly regulated, and then and there are certain things that would not ordinarily come to mind. So the best way, every other thing is subsumed under this, is to get a legal advisor and a compliance person. And then when it comes to this, so you can most times maybe at your early stage, you can have like the same person, do legal So, can you hear me? Can you hear me, please?
I can hear you, although it's breaking one. Overall, we cannot.
All right. So I think at any stage you can have the same person, double as legal and compliance, but at some point you have the code beyond the legal sphere, your legal compliance officer. But if otherwise quickly trained for compliance, if you're able to cover these things, then these people will be the ones to help mitigate the risk that you. So these people will help mitigate the risk that you may come across. So that's it for me on that point. Is there any other question on that side?
I think we have one last question. It has to do with is it possible to rescind a fintech investment agreement? If yes, what are the possible reasons? I don't know how clear that question is, but
I was able to say that because which of the agreements are you specifically referring to?
The question has to do with a fintech investment agreement. More like having entered into the agreement or the contract, can you easily pull out of it? If yes, what are the possible reasons?
So I presume that the person is referring to like a definitive agreement, perhaps maybe an SP or something. So generally, what it boils down to the principles of contract, right? At the point where this is if I actually get what the person is asking. Yeah, it boils down to the principles of contract. they are typically terms that all the parties, that both parties or all the parties, when that we have more than two parties, they are terms that the parties have agreed upon and then they've entered into. And then the agreements would typically contemplate situations like this. So when it comes to a situation where you want to pull out of an agreement or rescind an agreement, we would have to go back to the agreement. It's only in certain instance where there's a particular clause that would there's a particular clause that would be faulted by the law. That is when we're now like recourse to the law. But ordinarily, it is what you guys have agreed upon that the court would interpret. So on that basis, the agreements might state that in the event that you no longer want to continue with this is XYZ thing that would be done. But typically, if it has gotten to a point where all the parties have agreed upon everything, it has been signed, and then you're at a point where you need to execute. By execute, I mean performance of contract rights. At that point, it might be treated as a breach, and the agreement itself would also state how a breach would be treated, what would amount to a gross breach, what is forgivable in quotes and what isn't, and then the recourse that you might have and the penalties that might occur. And so it's basically the agreements that will decide or determine what would be done in the event that a party decides not to go ahead with an agreement. Another thing that could also happen is if the agreement also permits, as an investor, let's say you are an angel investor, you're an individual who decides to invest in a fintech, you could decide to sell your shares, right? Transfer your shares to a new investor if the terms of the engagement with the company permits. So there are usually like exit modes as agreed by the parties that can be explored in events that you decide not to go ahead with an agreement with investment further. I don't know if this answers the question.
I actually think it does. In line with the interpretation of the question, I think you've actually answered the question. There's just one more thing I just want to add in terms of question 2 that dealt with confidentiality, I think. But what I would advise basically, because of the nature of a term sheet, it's actually in your interest to ensure that beyond the term sheet, you can actually have a separate confidentiality agreement between the parties to, the engagement or the agreement. Let me just say the engagement that the term sheet seeks to cover. That would give you more protection as much as possible. So beyond the term sheet, when you have a term sheet, you're already into talks. Everybody is talking to one another. You are trying to determine what the key factors or the key terms of the contracts would be, and all of that. All those go into the term sheets. And of course, since the term sheet is an ongoing negotiation and a document, so it's important for you to ensure that you have another agreement that is of a binding nature between the parties to all the entire collaboration, engagement, and communications and all that. So have a separate agreement that can protect you, beyond what the term sheet is actually talking about, especially as it relates to, confidentiality issues. One other thing I would say, also in terms of term sheets, basically, is that when you have a poorly drafted term sheets, just know that your outcomes will be poor. So it's very key that entrepreneurs, fintech companies, you don't have to go the whole hog all alone. Focus on your business, get professionals, get lawyers. Like I said, don't go and look for a criminal law expert to now come and be looking at a fintech law agreement or a term sheet. It actually doesn't work that way. You need to look out for, sector experts and all that. If you have a criminal case, then you can be talking to a criminal lawyer. If you have a fintech issue, do look for a fintech lawyer that can deal with all the issues, that understands the entire ecosystem and value chain of a fintech transaction, a fintech communication, a fintech collaboration, all those things. That would actually be in your best interest, so that when you're talking about term sheets, you can have somebody who actually understands the issues to be able to draft for you. You don't have to draft it yourself. You don't have to draft it yourself, and you don't have to go and start downloading things online. You know, I've actually had a client once who downloaded an online agreement, and the agreement actually said that if there is an issue between the parties, that the relevant court would be the courts in Delaware in the United States. This is somebody who have an international passport, you know. So how are you now going to go to Delaware to go and sort out your issues? So those are some of the things that happen when you try to, you know, circumvent the process. Let the accountants do what they know best how to do. Let the lawyers do what they know best how to do. And in dealing with lawyers, look for sector experts. Don't just run off because there's a lawyer in your village and you're like, oh, come and help me to look at this fintech transaction, give me your views. No, you have to look for experts in the field. So we're almost rounding up now. I just want to say a very big thank you to everyone. We still have a few announcements to make with respect to, I think there were two things that we didn't touch on in terms of the announcements. I believe that for all of us who are actually on the page right now, any other thing that we would need to communicate to you, Mr. Hussein will definitely reach out. I want to really appreciate all of you that started through from the very beginning of today's program till the end. I want to appreciate all the mentees for the, you know, for the very, very wonderful research and the presentations. I can see so much more life into the presentations as we see them. People are actually presenting now much more than reading, which is actually a huge step in the right direction. So thank you to all our mentees for doing a very great job today. I also want to thank all our mentors who could make it. Mr. Chuma Kana, thank you so very much. Ife Oluwa, thank you so very much as well. We couldn't have the benefit of listening to Pisakola and Peretimi. Hopefully in the future, we'll be able to have them to really join us on the FinTech program. So thank you, everyone. Please do well to tag your mentors and just state what you've learned today on the program. Put few words out there. Let's see how we can create buzz across LinkedIn and other social media platforms. And be sure to really set you know, a goal as to what you intend to do with all this information that you have here on the program. And hopefully, in the absence of any other information, a very big thank you once more. And to our convener as well, I just want to say a very big thank you to JIIPCC for putting this together. Thank you, everyone, for standing by till the very end of today's program. I wouldn't know if Hussein has anything to say. Hussein, do you have anything else to add to the conversation before we wrap it up?
Okay, yeah, it's about the. Can anybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, about the announcements you forgot to make. So the registration for the JIIPCC next quarter for JIIPCC Mentorship and Internship program is currently ongoing. So you can see that I'm sharing the screen, and this other announcement is that a 30-minute one-on-one session is being organized by JIIPCC. So you can have a 30-minute session with your favorite mentor, discussing any of the topics you want to gain more knowledge on. And we are also going to be having a get-together party by the end of the year in Abuja on the 10th of December and in Lagos on the 17th of December. You are all invited to join us and have fun that day. Thank you very much once more, everybody, for joining us today, and have an amazing week. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.